Okay, good morning, everyone. We are trying this live broadcast via YouTube for our second try. I think it's going to be working. So I just got an email from somebody saying it wasn't working a minute ago. Well, it was supposed to work at 10. So is it working now? If anybody's following on chat, just let me know if you can actually see this. That would be great. If you joined us via chat, um, you've already figured out how to do that. But if you came through the group leaders page onto the from NCYC dbqarch.org/NCYCGL. If you're watching it there, you won't be able to take part in the chat. So if you just click on the YouTube icon in that display, and you'll be able to take part in the chat. That's what we're hoping to do. So as we go through today's presentation, feel free to take notes and chat any questions you have or concerns, and then we will address those as time permits. My hope is to run through this relatively quickly. So that you can always come back and review some of the stuff later. And some of the information we're going to share today is going to change in the next 5 minutes, probably. So it might be out of date, some of it soon, but the concepts will be there. And if you'd like to even show this video again to members of your NCYC team or your parish team, it'll always be right where you found it. So the link you used to get here will be where this video will be stored as soon as we're done presenting. So let's go ahead and begin diving into NCYC 2017 from the Archdiocese. So this is, again, pertinent just to the Archdiocese of Dubuque, specifically information. So follow along and let's all learn together. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about NCYC specifically and a few updates about our diocesan delegation. We're going to talk about an NCYC team, what that could look like, and then what makes NCYC youth ministry work. And we're also going to talk about some practical ideas about fundraising specifically, but some other ideas too about making NCYC a little bit easier on you and better for everyone all around. Cool? Let's dive in. All right, so here's our as of right now report. By the way, when I put together this Prezi last week, that's what I meant by right now. So I'm going to try to correct on the spot the information. We have 57 groups signed up. That's actually 3 more groups than we had last year. So that's, again, a little bit of progress in that direction. Of the whole diocese, there's 160 some parishes in the diocese, and 109 of them are represented by our delegations going. So that's actually a great response. Again, last week we had 1,782 teens and adults. Officially on our books, we have 1,769, but we have 26 now on the waiting list. We'll talk about the waiting list coming up soon. So that means our actual number as of today is 1,795. Now, we are not trying, it's not our goal to get to 1,800. But if there are 5 more kids who want to go, or 5 more adults who sign up with their group, that would put us at 1,800 strong. Then we'd have to change our whole branding with social media from 1,700 strong. And I just don't want to do that. So let's just stick with 1,700. We'll talk about how that process works a little bit sooner. So this is again higher than it was in 2015. It's a trend for this diocese to keep growing this program and reaching out to more teens and adults with the national conference. This is a map that kind of shows where everybody's coming from in the diocese. You should be able to see yourself as a circle. The blue circles are groups of 10 or fewer, yellows between 10 and 30, and then oranges like 30 to 50, and the red ones are huge. I made an exception and made a super big one in Waterloo because they have 3 buses coming from the Waterloo Catholic parishes. Invoices were given to our finance office on Wednesday. They were, in theory, mailed. So please pay attention. Those will be going to the bookkeeper that we think is most responsible for your group. So you might not get those directly, but please make sure your bookkeepers know they're coming. There's not a lot of explanation on the invoices for what they're about. We tried to do as best we can with the limited function we have for how our finance office is working. They could only use 30 characters, for example, but you can log into your group leader portal at any time and see as up to date as we can make it financial statement for you. So all of that invoicing will be explained there. If you want to do a screenshot of that and give it to your bookkeeper, it might be helpful. We're still waiting to hear from the Federation on hotels, MCs, keynotes. I've been a part of some of those conversations, and I can tell you that they're still kind of early in the process. It's our plan at this point to be in the same hotels we were last year, plus one or two. We have probably outgrown the 4 hotels we used last time. But we will probably still be using at least most of those same hotels. That's all we know at this point. Somebody asked the question, should we start putting our students into our group portal? If you have all that information, you can. I guess I wasn't planning on addressing that today, so let's just do it now. If you want to use the individual registration form, which is available on the group leader page of our website, you should be able to collect all the information you need to start putting that in. If you want to enter that in, that's fine. There's no urgency to do that. We're hoping that would be done by April or May would be helpful for us, but we also want to have our forms back by April or May as soon as possible. I'll be explaining that a little bit more in next month's Group Leaders live streaming event. So we'll be talking about what Jim and I are planning as far as how forms work. We still don't have the form from the national office. I won't have that till the end of January. So until then, we're kind of still on the back burner with forms and registration. But if you have that information and you want to put it in and get a head start on it, it's pretty easy to do. It certainly doesn't hurt anything to do it soon. All right, if you have a change in your group size, some of you have already been very proactive about letting me know. That's the best thing you can do, is just let me know. If you think somebody's going to drop or somebody has to step aside, or if you have more coming in, please just let me know. The plan right now is to put people on a wait list that has people waiting to buy spots from parishes and need to reduce their group size. So if you had too many estimates or too many deposits, you need to get rid of some of those. Please know there are 26 people in line waiting for those spots. So if you think your group might be getting smaller, actually I should say, if you know your group's going to be getting smaller, then let's go ahead and sell one of your spots now, and then you'd be issued a credit for that in the April payment. If we cannot find a buyer or a seller, if we can't make that work, what we do before the next billing cycle, so the end of March, if you're one of those spots on the waiting list to buy a spot, what Jim and I will do then is we'll just make sure we have enough buses and hotel rooms to accommodate our group size, and we'll just incorporate you in. So we want to leave you on that wait list just in case there's parishes looking to buy your spot or sell a spot to you, so that it doesn't hurt them in the long run. But we will make this all work as best as we can before the April payment cycle starts. Now, that's something we can do when it's early like this, but once it gets later, like June, July, or even worse in August or September, we're not going to be able to do that as much then. So because we're early out, we still have a lot more flexibility. Let me know if you have any questions about that. Again, you should be able to log into your group leader portal. It should look like this, and you should be able to see how many people are in your group size and your group size history. If you're on the waiting list, you should see a sentence on the bottom of the portal here that says you have how many people on the waiting list. Your financial records tab is there. Group roster would list all of your participants that you've already put in already. So that's helpful. All right. That's the update. I'm going to go into this concept of an NCYC team. One of the things that we've learned on our end, just at the diocesan level, that makes NCYC doable for us is when we changed from having it be just me and Judy Arlen back in 2005 doing everything at the hotels ourselves to growing a team of, now last time we had 21 people, this year we think we're going to have 25 people. That team approach really makes this easier for you, and it makes it better for the program itself. So that's something we've learned on our end, and the more you can empower your adults to help out, the more you can empower your teens as well to view themselves as part of a team that's putting this on, not just one person. It becomes a lot more effective. When I was brand new in ministry, I was confronted by my mentor who was assigned to me and said, you keep referring to it as your ministry. It's not your ministry. It's the parish's ministry, and it's your job to coordinate it. That didn't sit well with a 23-year-old egotistical, arrogant, little young youth ministry leader who knew everything, right? I wanted it to all be about me, but I was challenged persistently to start thinking about it being my parish's ministry and something I was just merely there to facilitate and assist them in doing. That's a change for a lot of us. So here's how we measure success, right? If there's a lot to do and you're not doing it, that's great. And when other people are doing youth ministry on behalf of the parish and you're not the one doing it, that's really success. So it's okay to move in that direction. I list here a list of tasks that could be used or could be done for NCYC, and you see that there's a lot of things to do. Collecting payments, even keeping track of who's paid what, collecting forms and reviewing them before you send them in so you make sure there's initials and signatures everywhere they need to be. Recruiting the right chaperones, finding trading items, meeting with teens and doing teen formation, of which we're going to have formational resources coming out and available somewhat soon this spring yet. Putting together a social media plan or a parish prayer chain, or communicating with us, letting us know about how things are going. All of these tasks that you can look at. What would it be like if you were to find one of your adult volunteers to do one of these things? So maybe you have some of your chaperones who are coming along who have giftedness in one of these areas or tasks, to just ask them, could you be in charge of the fundraising initiative? What would that feel like to you if you didn't have to worry about that? Or what would it feel like to you if there was somebody who knows social media better than you and they're in charge of your group's social media plan? So again, it's just a way to empower people into ownership over the program, and it makes your job easier and it makes the program better the more we can depend on other people. Now, maybe you don't think you have giftedness in your chaperones. Well, then you got a bigger problem. So there's different kinds of tasks, and all of us are kind of built with this charism or this giftedness that we bring to our ministry. And I don't think it's appropriate for any one of us to think that we have to have all of the giftedness needed to be effective in youth ministry. So what we're hoping to do is look around the adults in your community and find out what gifts do you have and what gifts don't you have, and then look for the adults to fill the gaps to help you out with that which you're not necessarily great at. Moving on to some of the examples of this. So let's look at, here's what a team could look like, all of these people towards the same cause of simply making NCYC as effective of an evangelical program as it can be. You know, it starts with you. I mean, we can't do NCYC without a group leader. There needs to be a primary person, a primary responsible leader in charge that makes sure everything's happening the way it needs to happen to be effective. You are going to be the guru of all things NCYC for your faith community. You're going to know more and be more involved than anybody else, and that's just how it needs to be effective. But then you can tap into these adult volunteers, right? A lot of you have increased your ratio of adults to young people. You have more adults going because of the drive of NCYC, and they want to be with their kids. So these adults who are going really let's look at them as more than just chaperones. To me, a chaperone is somebody who's just there to make sure that nobody dies and nobody gets conceived, and that's okay. I mean, those things need to happen, but a chaperone also needs to be, or maybe these adults also need to be, faith mentors or other leaders or people who can contribute to the cause of NCYC. And don't underestimate the value of your teens. I've heard 2 different stories this year of a group of teenagers who took it upon themselves to go to a parish nearby and invite that parish to start an NCYC delegation. So teens themselves are really capable of growing your program and forming your program and assisting your program. I would say that the #1 reason NCYC is growing in our diocese is because of teen empowerment, because our young people are taking leadership roles. We have to talk about your pastor, because your pastor is critically important. Make sure you're consulting your pastor about a lot of things we're going to talk about with fundraising coming up in a little bit, but make sure you're bringing your pastor into the conversation, not excluding him or omitting him from anything that he needs to be aware of. I like the idea of empowering a prayer team. Parishes have people who want to support youth ministry but don't like teenagers. Well, here's a role for them, just to pray for the support of the parish. A social media guru, we talked about that before, and your donors, people who give to you, people who contribute funds to you. Those are people who you need to think of as part of your team, because without them, really, we can't make this work either. Maybe you want to have a fundraising queen, somebody, or a king, somebody who's responsible to kind of tap into those donors and the prayer team and just make sure everybody feels like they're a part of this. Parents and family members, make sure we're communicating with parents as a primary faith formators of their kids. Make sure they're aware of what we're doing and why, and make sure we invite those parents and family members to watch the live streaming general sessions at NCYC on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, as well as Friday morning and Saturday morning. If you can provide a way for them to do that at the parish, to come together and watch those together and have somebody coordinate that, that'd be delightful. So again, just trying to expand the vision of what NCYC is. I'm acutely aware, in a lot of our parishes, a lot of our groups, it's pretty much just a person and maybe a few chaperones. So if that's where you are now, just maybe look at this and think, what can we add to and how can we empower other people to be a part of this conversation? So here's some things to keep about with recruiting parishioners. Now these are things to keep in mind, whether you're recruiting somebody to be a catechist or a small group leader or an NCYC chaperone or somebody to wipe the pews down or pick the gum off the bottom after Mass. Okay, so when you're trying to recruit volunteers and active parishioners, I like the idea of really encouraging a job description. Now the job description is going to say pretty much what you're expecting from them to do, and so they know they're not committing to more than they can keep up to. Have you ever volunteered for a thing that wasn't an end date and you ended up being more work than you thought it was going to be? Like my hunch is that a lot of people got into professional ministry because Father said, come to the parish, we need somebody, it'll only take like 2 hours a week, and now it's your full-time job and you got a graduate degree in theology because that's just how you got sucked in. A job description should be very specific about what's actually asked for. There's been a lot of times I've volunteered for things I didn't realize how complicated they were going to be. The job description should set the time limits, identify the skills and traits necessary. I like this too. Give an end date. This is when you can opt out, and it's my job to find somebody else to fill this role. So for NCYC, the end date could be November 20th, the Monday after we get back. Or maybe not. Maybe you want your adult mentors to be committed to working with this group of young people for a few months after NCYC. And maybe that's some of them, but not all of them. And to help them to understand why what they're doing is important. So to identify the mission of what we're about. A good chaperone for NCYC specifically, I really think anybody who's working with teenagers when it comes to faith needs to have a mature and non-threatened faith. So if a young person is going to challenge or question them about something that they're learning about at NCYC, the faith formation leader or the chaperone themselves shouldn't be threatened by that, should need to know how to address that appropriately. A servant's heart, somebody's going to want to be with young people even when they're tired. Somebody who's responsible and able to get themselves to bed at midnight and stop talking. I'm really tempted to name a few of you right now that I see on the chat, but I'm not gonna. Somebody who's comfortable being uncomfortable. So rather than whining and griping, hopefully you can find somebody who's going to be able to put a smile on their face and be joy-filled even in the midst of discomfort. And comfortable with teenagers. Those are kind of important things I could think of when it comes to the qualities of a good chaperone. Now, hopefully, if you haven't found all your chaperones yet, you want to keep those things in mind as you start to invite people in, not just to take anybody, but to make sure we're picking the right people. And using the right people is the right way, in the right way is what makes NCYC effective, just like using NCYC in the right way is what makes faith formation effective. You're going to hear me say this a lot. NCYC is a big deal in the Archdiocese of Dubuque. We have the largest group in the history of the universe. We know that. Everybody else knows that. It's a big deal for us. My concern is that NCYC becomes an end to itself. Is that we focus so much on doing NCYC that maybe we're not focusing on other important things. NCYC, we need to remember, is a part of a much bigger system of engagement. It cannot be the only thing we do. So how do we imagine faith formation in the midst of NCYC and faith sharing groups and confirmation preparation and religious education and service trips in the summer? How do all of those things that you offer for your faith community, how do those all work together? For example, we've learned that there is a correlation between NCYC and tech retreats. And so we were very deliberate this past year of mailing a postcard to every high school senior, inviting them to do tech, because we want people to know that there's something after this national conference. It's my hope too that NCYC makes your confirmation preparation program stronger, or makes your youth religious ed program stronger, or your faith sharing group stronger, or your service trip experiences better. And it's my hope that service experiences make NCYC better. So they all really need to be looked at as a part of a whole, as a system and how they operate. Now, when we talk about faith formation, it's also important to think about what's going on in the entire parish community. One of the great downsides we see of youth ministry is that sometimes youth ministry becomes an entity unto itself, that we gather the young people separate from the rest of the parish. So maybe your NCYC delegation might be this little cliquey group that might not be connected with the rest of your parish. And we want to do our best to look at this, what Bob McCarty calls as the one-eared Mickey Mouse. We got to make sure we're eliminating this model and moving on to another model that looks maybe something more like this, where in the midst of the parish is our parish's youth ministry program. And there's a give and take relationship between the youth of the parish and the rest of the general parish community, and they kind of live and work together. So a good youth ministry program is really designed to help young people know how to live as a parishioner, right? I mean, it's our goal eventually that these kids grow up and live out their Catholic faith by being active, faith-filled Catholics. So what are some ways that we can help young people to learn how to fully integrate into the parish? Well, once you get confirmed, we're encouraging everybody to invite their young people to be lectors and Eucharistic ministers and greeters and any other liturgical ministry, just so they're fully engaged in what it means to be part of that liturgy. Also, parishes around the diocese do have youth representatives on their parish councils. If they don't have youth leadership teams or any other kind of youth advocacy elements, something to maybe advocate for. How can you make sure the voice of our young people is considered in the parish's general direction? And then also peer evangelists. How do you use NCYC leaders deliberately when they get back? So your upperclassmen, your juniors and seniors, how do you use them to re-engage the freshmen and sophomores? We hear a lot of parishes who have said some of their best catechists or catechist aides are high school teens who are excited about their faith. We see that with Totus Tuus, right? When young people are coming to help out with the day program and they go to the evening program as well, that high school teens are good evangelists, and they can share the gospel almost better than we can sometimes. So those are examples of how the young people really feed and support the parish. We've heard a lot of stories about how NCYC success has led to stronger parish success. And the other way is that a good parish really takes seriously the role every parishioner plays in forming and sustaining faith-filled teen disciples. So it's not just something that we've hired a youth minister to do, but this is the parish's task, the parish's job. And by that we mean they're going to support and value parents, that families are important in the faith community, that they're providing faith-filled catechists, so authentic, authorized teachers of the faith are good and faith-filled, joy-filled people. And it provides funding. Right, so it's going to help you have the resources you need to be effective. So that relationship there of the parish to the young people really allows us to imagine what young people and our youth ministry in a very general level looks like and can be like in your parish. Now, let's take this, and what would it be like if we use this to talk about fundraising? Fundraising is a big trap we all fall into. This overwhelming pressure to raise enough money to cover the costs of this program. I understand it's a burden for a lot of us, but here's some mistakes. Sometimes selling stuff people don't need at twice the price that they would pay for it otherwise creates a margin gap for you. You're not going to get as much money, and they're going to get something they're just going to throw away. So there's stewardship problems with that. There's a great line that says, if you've ever spent 3 weeks planning a car wash to make $18.43, you might be a youth minister. That's from Apex Ministries. There's a lot of times we do a lot of work for a really minimal bang for our buck, and it would just be easier if everybody just went and got a job at a McDonald's or Taco Bell and made minimum wage. They would make 400 times more than if they're doing the fundraising efforts we put in front of them. And then also, we get stuck running a business instead of a ministry. That one is the one I think is probably the most, when I see it and hear it, it kind of gets a little bit disturbing. Now, I'm going to give you the opportunity here. If you've got a great fundraising idea, I'm going to ask you to at least chat in the chat box something to summarize it. I got one at the end of the last webinar. Martin Arndt from I don't remember if it's Light of Christ or Christ Our Hope. It's the same. Anyway, from up in the Protovan, Fort Atkinson, Lawler is where his office is. Anyway, Martin said that he has worked with local community leaders to sponsor their T-shirts, and so they each pay them money, and he's got a T-shirt sponsorship, which brings people in, and then they get to advertise. So it really is a sense of again, community ownership over their youth program. Again, just a reminder, if you have a great fundraising idea that you've used that's worked for you, go ahead and put it in the chat box. I've got 2 or 3 I'm going to walk through and just show what they could look like. This is from the imagination of Kevin Fine, so they might not at all be effective for what you're doing. Again, so if you have some ideas, go ahead and put them into the chat box, things that might have been done well. And I can start naming some other things people do too. hesitant to name people without their permission. We have a parish that does a spaghetti supper every year for NCYC, and people decide what they pay. So it's the same meal, but you can pay $10 a plate, $20 a plate, $30 a plate, or $40 a plate based on how much you feel like contributing. And everybody gets to be served by the young people, and it's a celebration kind of the community together. I know of other people who do celebrations for timely events, and again, it's a pay to come in and be a part of a community thing. Again, bringing the parish together and the spirit of NCYC and of working together to make this thing happen. All right, so I'm just going to move in, but if you've got something you're typing in, just go ahead and submit it. I'll stop when I can to read what people are throwing in. Ooh, we sold popcorn. Okay, we made about $2,500. That's not bad from wherever St. Patrick is. We do a drive-through chicken diner with a local business, and the youth do the work to get it ready, serve all the sell tickets beforehand. Okay, cool. And all of these, even as you're doing selling, the selling of popcorn, how do we make that about part of our mission, not just about selling the product? So that's just my challenge. How do we connect to that? We also just asked the parishioners. I love this. We're going to talk about this. I'm going to talk for 3 to 5 minutes. Already having addresses and stamped envelopes that people take. Yep. So I've heard of that before, where people just pick up an envelope, put money in it, and send it back in the mail. St. Patrick's walk on. Good work. All right. So fundraising is an investment, just back to the slides. Encourage people to give because they believe in the product. Sell the mission, not the candy. So Mandy, that would be my challenge with the popcorn. How are we attaching at all the mission of NCYC or the mission of youth ministry or the mission of the Catholic Church to that popcorn? I'm sure there's an easy way to do that, even if that's with attaching a little sticky note to each one or some kind of a saying, or make sure the kids are wearing some kind of apparel that indicates that they're really about something great, so that people know they're not just buying popcorn. When we sell popcorn with Scouts, that's kind of people believe in scouting. That's why they buy the popcorn, because otherwise it's a real ripoff. It's really expensive. It's yummy, don't get me wrong. So also, when you're doing fundraising, not a bad idea at all to brag about the good you're doing. So hopefully when people are coming to that chicken dinner, there's some promotions around there saying what people are doing and what the money's going to and what the effect of NCYC has been, so people can take real ownership over that. Selling 50-50 tickets at the races. Wow, so you just go around and sell things. The Moo Mobile for a day at the fair. I'm almost distracted by the Moo Mobile, but okay, great, Melanie, that's funny. Okay, moving forward, good stuff. Again, getting involved in the community. If you can keep those other concepts in mind about bragging about your success and connecting the mission to the product. I like the idea of stock. So let's just go into stock. I think this is something, who just mentioned it earlier? Somebody just, I think, referenced to the idea of LOCGOF. That's Martin, right? The idea of asking just for money. I like this idea of selling stock. We did this when I was in parish, and it was a very simple task. People came in, gave us money. We wrote down their name and address, and we sold a stock, and a share was $10, or you can make it $20. And they were stockholders. They were investors in the future of our young people. And then what we did in return is, when we were at Indianapolis, we had their name and address. We had pre-written postcards that we got together at NCYC, and we addressed them and sent them from Indianapolis. So they knew that we were thinking of them and praying for them. And they were able to see the effect in hard copy come back to their mailbox. And then when we got back, we fed them and bragged about it. We showed the slideshow of all of our pictures and all that kind of stuff. Melanie also says, I set up student bank accounts so that this is funny. You're gonna see this coming up a little bit later. Students who do the work get the money they earn, and those that don't can't mooch. Mooch is a very Christian term, isn't it? I'm going to come back to that a little bit. Remember, fundraising is a means to an end. Do not spend more time making money than you do making disciples. If money becomes the primary focus of NCYC, perhaps you're too big. Don't talk about money more than you talk about Jesus. We have to make sure we're not running a business, we're running a ministry. Don't use guilt to get donors. That we are not really about trying to take money from people. We're trying to get them to buy into and remember that this is stewardship for a mission that's bigger than all of us. And this is important when it comes to that pastor relationship before. if your pastor says, I don't want you doing fundraising, or I don't want you asking that person for money, it seems like that's a threat to the program. But we need to remember that there's a lot more things the church is trying to support than just NCYC. So if your pastor gives that kind of direction, I'm encouraging you to respect that. It's hard to imagine, but there's a lot of other things going on that your parish needs money for, some of which are more important than NCYC. And I have to say that from even sitting in my office, we believe that. Interesting that somebody had the negative impact in the stock experience. That's interesting. My experience was different. Now I'm going to challenge you. This is a challenging one, and I don't mean it to be taken lightly. And but at the same time, I don't want to drive guilt on this. But this has been something that's kind of plagued me. And when I was in parish ministry, I really wanted to have the sense of communal ownership over the program, rather than the individual bank accounts kind of concept. So Melanie, I'm just going to push back on this a little bit. Hopefully I do it respectfully, and I hope because I think you're not alone. There's a lot of people who track individual ownership over NCYC rather than communal. But this is a statement about the origins of our church, that we all held everything in common. They would sell their property and possessions and divide them according to each one's needs. Now this is the early Catholic Church. Living in dependency, one another, taking care of each other. This is our model of stewardship. So what would this be like in a fundraising example? Well, let's say you have 10 people in your group. So rather than thinking about that as each person needs to raise $550, you would have 10 people, and they all need to raise, this group, this entity of our delegation needs to raise $5,500. Now, that could be solved pretty easily, right? You can go to one benefactor and say, will you give us $5,500? It doesn't matter who asks that person, right? It doesn't matter if you've got one of your kids has got a rich uncle, and that's where you get your $5,500. That doesn't mean the other 9 aren't worth going. It doesn't mean that the kid who raised that money by asking his rich uncle should be able to keep the other $5,000 as petty cash. It's thus we have succeeded. We have accomplished our goal. Since fundraising is more about building community and sharing gifts with the parish, there really shouldn't be a personal reward or bragging rights or I have but you don't. That's not who we are as a Catholic community. We are not people who actually look forward to building economic division. So, and how this could work, and I'm just wondering if I got this in the slide here, I don't. When we did this, I did this with a group of 30 people, and the cost for our trip was about $400 a piece, and we fundraised communally. All of the profits we made went into a kitty, went into a pot. And at the end of every month, we would look at that amount and say we had $10,000 in our pot, and I would divide that by our number of people going and say to each kid, okay, so according to how much we've raised, you owe us $100. There's $50 per person in our kitty. Would you like to use that $50, or can you make the $100 payment yourself? When we made that ask to the families, the majority of our families who could afford the $100 a person paid it, and the ones who couldn't afford that $100 took it. And there was no guilt in taking it, but our families who could afford the way to go knew that by letting other people benefit from that fundraised money, they were helping the cause, they were helping the mission, they were helping the faith community. And so most people who could afford it then simply opted out of the fundraised. It wasn't about trying to make more and get what's in it for me. It was about how do we work together to bring this about. That took a lot of catechesis. There were a lot of people who were offended by it. But I'm trying to challenge you to think that the way we do money as a church needs to be consistent with who we are as church. Again, I'm just putting that challenge out there to look at this as a whole, as an economic principle, as a socially just issue, rather than as who can take care of themselves quickest. Okay, that's going to be challenging. So, by the way, if you don't do that, I'm not going to call and get your parish closed. No worries. Other things to keep in mind, though, meet God halfway. So I really encourage you as much as possible to make sure everybody's putting some skin in the game. So a $50 deposit, at least a $50 deposit. Please don't promise to raise all of the money for all your kids. That does not do long-term good for your program. When we say meet God halfway, it's also important to remember that halfway is different for each person. Some people have a lot further to go to get to $550 than others who can just write a check tomorrow. So make sure we're working with each person according to their needs. Help teens to see that their attendance at NCYC as a gift to their community. So it's not just something they're doing for themselves, but it's also going to help our church in the long run. And be aware that financial assistance is available from the Archdiocese. We have hardship discounts and low income discounts. I believe those forms are already posted to the group leader page. Please put those in hands of families that you think can use them. So a hardship is somebody who really needs NCYC because of something going on in their life, like a divorce or maybe not the death of their goldfish, but maybe the death of their grandparents or some other kind of hardship that they're going through that they just really need a positive faith experience to help get them through. That's a hardship. Low income is measured by whether or not they qualify for free or reduced price school lunch at their school. Those are the financial assistance we have through the Archdiocese. There is also financial assistance available from the Catholic Youth Foundation USA, but that's primarily for encouraging diversity in our attendance. So if you work with a significant Hispanic community, for example, or the Burmese community, Annie, that might be a place you can apply for funding. They really like to increase the diversity of NCYC. Cool. All right. So again, I will be fielding questions. So if you've got things to plug into the chat box, here's your chance to do that. We can address those kind of at this point. But otherwise, be prepared for next month. We're going to talk about forms. That's going to be our big thing for February. Hopefully, we have all the information we need by then. Again, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box. Also, remember, if you have changes in your group size, let us know. We do have 26 people waiting to buy spots. So if you have more than you need, you can make somebody happy and get your money back from those January payments. The invoices are out. Be paying attention to those. As soon as we get a check and we know we have a check, I'll try to make sure we put those credits into your account on the group leader portal. If you want to start plugging your people in now, I saw earlier that yeah, Kelly, right? Is that where am I? Come on. I'm looking. Who said that they were doing the Michelle? Michelle, that's your name, Michelle Kelly. I was close. All right, Michelle is already adding in a lot of those, and other groups have done that too. There you are. Thanks, Michelle. Go. Okay, you got your last name as your first name. My bad. So yeah, a lot of groups have already put their people in, and that's fine. That's certainly fine. We actually don't pay attention to that yet because we don't need that data until like August or September. But if you want to get that in, go ahead. Somebody made a map of each mile to Indy and was a certain dollar amount. That's cool. So people could donate per mile. That's kind of neat. So they see ownership over that, know what they're putting money into. By the way, not a bad idea also. At the end, create a report for your entire parish about what NCYC has done, who went, and what kind of experiences you had, and then put that as a bulletin insert so everybody can see the good you're doing. Always brag about your success. It's the best way to guarantee you have a job next year, and it's a great way to have the parish see the good that you're doing and celebrate who they are as a parish. Yep. Each mile that was at Manchester. Okay, Blessed Trinity Cluster. Keep a poster in the back of each parish with a map. That's great. That's a great idea. Will the info we need for the portal be on one of the forms you sent us for the meeting? Can you clarify that? The forms you sent us for the meeting? Yeah, so the info you need for the portal, Martin, is the individual registration form, and that is on the group leader page of the Archdiocesan website. So that's already there. It's a one-page sheet that provides all the information that NFCYM needs for NCYC and some information that we use as well. So that's the standard data collection. You don't need to send those forms to us. Those forms are just there to make sure you can collect all the right information. Okay, any other questions? Again, I'll stick around for a little while in case you have anything else you can type in. You can always shoot me an email or give me a call. This afternoon, I will send out just a few written notes about what we talked about today and get those emailed out to you. Again, as soon as this video is done, they will be posted right to YouTube directly and instantly as soon as I click stop. And then we should be fine from them. Okay. Any other questions? Yep. So I think that, oh, right. We talked about the several forms within the same color. Yep. Those forms we're hoping to send out to each parish. That's what we're going to talk about in February on the 17th. As far as what that forms meeting could look like, we're hoping every parish will do a meeting in March or April to collect their forms and meet with their participants and their families. So any other questions? If not, you can go ahead and enjoy the rest of your Friday. I hear it's supposed to be a lovely weekend. So should be fun and wintry. Okay, everyone, thanks for everything you do. And if you have any questions, let me know and we'll get to help with you. All right, be good, everyone. Enjoy your day.